Thank you guys for coming. Thank you to CACLACICON for having me and all the volunteers that put this on. We appreciate you, so thank you. Before I get started, can I see of hands how many people here have heard of hardware implants or HIDe implants? Rubber duckies, Keystrokes, USB Samurai, anything like that. All right, perfect. Leave your hands up if you've actually used these in real-world applications. All right, so for the 8 of you or so, take note, I do this at every conference I speak at. I've had rooms filled with 300 people, and all the hands go down. So this kind of leads into why we developed Injectyll-HIDe, right? There's a gap in the tooling. We wanted to control the information. We wanted to be able to adapt to the circumstances, and we had no good options out there that weren't commercial. So we developed our own. With that, we'll kick off the talk. Welcome to Injectyll-HIDe. All your keyboards belong to us. My name is Jonathan Fisher. Like Ryan said, I have about 6 years of experience, close to 7 now, in the InfoSec community. All of it's been on the offensive side of things. Prior to that, I had about a decade or so where I designed electrical control systems, and this was for industrial control applications, off-highway machinery, so think barge cranes, rail equipment, asphalt pavers, things like that, heavy machinery. Yeah, not centrifuges, and not in Iran. For hobbies, I'm a hardware RF IoT enthusiast, and I'm the co-creator of Injectyll-HIDe along with a former colleague and friend of mine, Jeremy Miller. Standard work disclaimer, I'm here on my own behalf. Opinions are my own. My research is my own. I don't represent my previous or current employers in any capacity, shape, or form. With that, let's begin. Before we get into the live demo, which is the main portion of the talk, it helps to have an overview of what we're looking at. So if you're not familiar with the project, I have a keyboard that feeds into the implant, which then feeds into the target. So standard inline flow, right? And what's nice about this is we're able to then control the packets. We can see the keystrokes coming in, we can pass them through, we can stop them, we can add to them, you know, sky's the limit there. We have onboard memory here with the SD card, and we have a radio that communicates out to the C2. Now this is where a lot of the magic happens. This isn't just a standard hotspot. It is an IoT radio to start, so we have low power consumption, and it is a proprietary version of Zigbee. So we are actually mesh networking with the C2. And this was one of our target goals when we started this. You compromise one keyboard, great. You compromise 1,000 keyboards, people are really going to take notice, and your odds of getting good data that you can use skyrocket. Not only that, now you can shape your target network out where you want. You can get around barriers like thick concrete walls. You can go out windows, attach one to a drone to repeat your network. And you establish your own target infrastructure. You're not going through the existing infrastructure at the target, right? You have your own. So there's nothing analyzing your packets unless they're walking around with maybe an RF sniffer. But at that point, we are AES 256 encrypted, so have fun. All right, so now that you know what it looks like, let's talk about the actual application. So before is it not switching? Let me take it out of demo mode here. And wait for it. So as you can see, my live demo is a Windows reboot. No. Oops. Right? That's what happens when you put your background and your text the same color. No. So if we just delete this file. The first file is the C2 program. We just run a Python script, and then the next two I'll cover later. So all you really need to start off with is the C2 program. Perfect. So you run it, you got your implants in the environment, you hook your C2 radio up via USB to your computer, and you launch your program. You're greeted with a banner screen, and you are prompted to enter your COM port. You don't have to guess. We'll list all the COM ports that are available for you. Hopefully you know which one's yours. If not, just keep trying until you find it. But in this instance, I know it's COM port option 2. You're prompted for your baud rate. I know mine is at 1150/200. And then you're greeted with the main menu. And you can't see that. Awesome. There it is. All right, main menu. So now that you've deployed this in an environment, how are you actually going to interact with it, right? To start, you need to know what's there. And I can list what I've seen in the environment, which in this case, I've deleted all traces, right? So it's good practice. If you deploy these and you go to your target area, you're going to want to scan anyway, because if one drops offline, you don't want to assume it's there, try to connect and go, I'm not getting data, what's wrong? So I always recommend scanning. And this will go 10 seconds. It'll populate everything into a file, so all the addresses will be saved for reference later to make your life easier. Now, if you have 1,000 nodes out there, you might want to go back into the code and take it up over 10 seconds. I've never tried it. If anybody deploys 1,000, please contact me and let me know. All right, so now that we've scanned, we've created a list. And if I look at the list here, you'll see that we have an implant named implant, conveniently, with the address and a timestamp at which we scanned. All right, so now we have our implant. How do we interact with it? Well, when you deploy these, or if you choose to later, you can make these passive. So they're going to start as passive. So they'll just send keystrokes through, won't tamper with them, won't even communicate back to the C2. And the reason we do that is we don't want a footprint. We want to stay as quiet as possible so we're not generating extra traffic if we don't need to. So to wake it up, you send in an activation command. And you have two options. You can either send a global command. If you got 1,000, you're not going to want to do this one at a time, right? So you can either do a targeted one, which I'll show you here, or you can do a global one. In the future, I'll just do global because it saves me a step and we only have one implant. All right, it's active. So you guys think you don't know because we have no verification. So we'll go to option mode 4. Now, what this does is it'll pull the implant that we choose to get information, like what modes are active, how long has it been since we've seen the last keystroke. And where this comes into play is if you are trying to capture data or inject data, and it's been 3-4 minutes since it's been active, chances are the screensaver isn't active yet, and you still got a viable window. You also can tell if somebody's been away for 20 hours, it's probably not active. So we're going to go ahead, pull our device, and here you'll see that we are currently in a deactive key recorder mode. It's been about 17 minutes since the last key press, or since it's been powered up, and we have insomnia mode active. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, we call it insomnia mode. It is a mouse jiggler type that will move the pixel or the mouse just a couple pixels back and forth, so you can't see it with the naked eye. But we make sure we return home every time we do that, so you don't get mouse drift over time. And that'll help keep the screen alive for us, so we don't have to worry about going against a lock screen. All right, so now we know we're active. Insomnia mode is on, so it's not going to go to sleep on us. What are we going to do in a live op? Well, one of the things we can do is if we don't trust the timer, or if we just want to see what people are doing and see maybe what they're interacting with, we can sniff live keystrokes, because who doesn't like to do that, right? All right. So I have my wireless keyboard here, and if I just type something simple like hello, you can see it pop up. And live keystrokes are nice, and you can even see I hit escape there, wrong computer. All right, so they're nice, but I don't want to watch one, I want to do 1,000, right? So I'm going to get out of that mode. But one thing to note is every time you turn it on and off, we log it, and we timestamp it. So you can see we create a file with the ID of the implant, what we interpreted as the key presses with timestamps. Now, This is assuming the keyboards are US encoded. If you have a different country code in your keyboards, this is going to be off. But it gives you the general idea for now. We'll touch on that more later. So live keystroke sniffing, but again, 1,000 devices, I don't want to watch one at a time, I want to do them all. So we can actually record the keystrokes, which you see down here in option 8, enable keystroke recording. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we'll verify, just so you know I'm not crazy, at least somewhat. There we go. Key recorder mode active. All right, so now if we do something like, now I can't see what I'm typing, so no judgment on how I spell. And when I say no judgment, I mean no judgment. All right. Hello, Kakalaki-con. Now, if I type that right, great. If not, feel free to heckle. All right, so we recorded. Let's go ahead and disable that. Now, all right, we'll verify with option 4 again, just to get the status. And now you can see key recorder mode is deactivated. Great. Now we have a record, hopefully, on the implant. Now, in an op, you're not going to want to just go pull the implant and pull out a memory card to get the file, right? I mean, you can, but I don't recommend it. So we have another way to grab it. Bless you. We have another way to grab it, and that is right here. It's option 12, get file list from SD card. So when we choose this option, we'll choose the implant that we want to interact with. Oh, and it will populate all the files in the SD card. So here you can see we actually have a file in the data folder called keys.txt. So that's the file we're going to want to grab. And to do that, we do option 10, which is download keystroke recording from SD card to C2. Very verbose. I intend on fixing that later, but for now it works. So we choose the implant. We're going to populate a list of files in that directory. Right now we only have keys.txt, so we're going to choose that. We're going to spam you with notifications so you know that it's not sitting idle. And then we'll go back and look at the folder. And here you can see the ID again of the implant with just the file keys.txt. If we open it, you get to see a whole bunch of packets. Who can read this? Anybody? Right, exactly. If you stare at it long enough, it does kind of start to make sense. You got the K for the keyboard packet. If it's a mouse, it'll be an M. You have your modifier key right here, so left shift, right shift. The third one, I believe, is reserved. I haven't seen any values in that before. And the next ones are all key presses. So if you read it, you're better than I am. So I created scripts. So back to those parsing scripts, right? If we go ahead and launch the verbose one for the US keyboard encoding, we'll get the list of our file. We'll name it verbose. And we'll open it. And what this one will do is it will feed you the packets, but it'll also translate them for you. So now you can see each individual packet and what it means as far as, in this instance, the US keyboard encoding. And this is great if you're trying to write out your logic, if you are looking for how people commonly mistype things, if you're trying to feed it into, let's say, like machine learning or AI to establish patterns that are more realistic for injection. It's great for things like that. But again, I'm not going to be able to look at this and go, I see the password, right? So we're going to run a different script called output. Same concept, give it the file name, and this one we'll call output.txt. Now we'll create the output file and open it, and here you can see you actually have a readable text. Hello, Kakalaki-con, and take that because I believe I spelt that right. Thank you. And on that note, we're going to end on a high note, and thank you for coming. No, all right. So we got keystroke injection, or keystroke recording live and recorded. What else can we do, right? Let's have some fun. So I mentioned before about keystroke injection. Well, again, if you look at option 12, you'll see that we actually have 3 payloads on here for injecting keystrokes. We have a stager, we have a hello world, and we have a COM shell. When I gave you the overview, I told you we attach to the PC, right? What I didn't say is when we do that, we mount in 2 different fashions. The first is we mount as a generic HID device. So the computer's going to interpret what we are as a keyboard. But what we also do is we mount a COM port at the same time. So we are able to utilize that channel and redirect, let's say, a reverse shell back over the COM port and back out of the computer again, right? But you don't have to take my word for it because we're actually going to go ahead and do it. So we're going to choose option number 14, which is launch attack from script. We're going to choose our target. And we're going to choose the COM shell. Now, if you guys can see it on the victim here, you're going to see a window pop up where we are going to inject keystrokes, and it's going to be a PowerShell session that's going to be backgrounded, and it's going to attach a reverse shell over the COM port. Now, this reverse shell is going to go over the COM port, through the implant, over the mesh network, and back to our C2. So now we will have a reverse shell that exists outside of your infrastructure. There's no scanning it. There's nothing, right? So I'll let you digest on that for a second. Now, you can do this to all 1,000 at once if you want. And if you do that, you're not going to want to just be locked into the last one you launched, right? You're going to want to come and go as you please. So you can actually connect and disconnect from these sessions as you see fit. So I'm going to go ahead and assume it launched because I can't see it. And we're going to interact with it, all right? And a message. Now's the moment of truth. Who am I? Keep in mind you're over a mesh network, IoT protocols. It's not going to be the fastest thing in the world, but it is very covert. You can see we're here. All right, let's see what's on the desktop. And another thing to note is that depending on your target device, if it's a slow computer, you're going to get a slow communication back. If it's fast, this is going to be near real time. And sometimes, just sometimes, it doesn't always populate, but here it does. You can see we have a file called loot.txt. Well, doesn't that look convenient? Let's go ahead and see what it is. So we can go ahead and cat it, see what it says. It says this is the way. Great. But I don't want to just sit there and dump contents of files on my screen, copy, paste, and wash, rinse, repeat, right? Because I am lazy, I'm just going to exit it this way. So if you want to just disconnect, you can hit escape and reattach to another session. The reason I am typing exit is because I want to close the background session, because I'm going to go ahead and use this COM port again to exfil the file. I'm typing who am I again just to make sure that everything worked as planned and it's not feeding me back any information. All right, go ahead, disconnect. We're going to choose option 13 now. Now this one's hard-coded, so it doesn't have to be a script that we launch. And what we're doing here is we are going to go ahead and give it the file path. All right. It's because I hit enter too many times. So we're going to do a similar concept where we launch the injection script, and we are actually now going to, instead of a reverse shell, we want to go to desktop, don't we? We are actually G-zipping it, then base 64 encoding it, and then we're breaking it down into chunks and sending it over. And now you can see, this one I didn't tweak the timers, so you can kind of see it pop up if you are in line with the screen. What you're going to see on our screen, hopefully, is the data packets coming back in. And they'll slowly come in, letting us know that this is the hash of the data as it comes. And there it finished. All right, it works. Yay! Let's make sure it works. Before we get too excited, here we find our file, stuff.txt, and this is the way. So now we successfully exfil the file, again, over the COM port, through the implant, and over the mesh network, back to the C2 where we recreated it. Pretty cool, right? Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, so what else can we do? We can manipulate the file system on the SD card. We can push files to it. We have what we call self-destruct mode, where if you think you're going to be discovered, or you think you're being too noisy, or you're just going to go away and you don't want somebody to find your data, you can send it the command out, and it's going to put these things into a passive mode, and it's going to wipe the SD cards, right? Somebody finds it, they're going to freak out, especially if they find 1,000 of them, but they're not going to capture your data or your payloads. And to combat that, let's say they don't find it and you want to come back Monday morning, fire this thing back up. We have an option here that is option 15. You can repopulate that SD card with your injection scripts again without having to retrieve all the SD cards yourselves, right? You can delete files. So if I just want to delete the keys.txt, or if I have a payload that I found didn't work and I want to get rid of it, I can go ahead and delete that. There it goes. Now if I repopulate the options, is it telling me it's time? Hello. There it goes. All right, you can see it's deleted. So that's the quick version of the walkthrough. Let's go ahead and go back to the demo or the presentation. All right, so now if this didn't work, I had some slides handy for you guys with pictures of my kids. It was going to be exhilarating, but we didn't have to use it. So, no, I lie. I had a GIF ready for you guys that walked through it, but that's not near as fun, right? All right, so with that, I'd like to give a special thank you to the co-creator of Injectyll-HIDe, my buddy Jeremy Miller, the EFF, for working with us on responsibly disclosing our research, Soldier of Fortran and Redfish for mentoring us and helping us get this off the ground. If you want to contribute or you want the data, we put everything on the repo. We don't hold anything back. So everything's up there, schematics, parts, code. Feel free to make suggestions, add to it. I mean, we're completely open here. We have the Twitter account and we have a public Discord you guys can join. We put the latest updates on there as we do them. Feel free to contribute, ask questions. We're always available. If you want to contact me directly, that's fine too. And any questions? Yes?
How much does it cost to build?
By hand, the radios are the most expensive part. So they're about $25. The rest of it I can make. If I order like from JLC PCB, I can get 5 boards for $5, and then each chip's $3. But I'm hand soldering these under a microscope right now. One of the projects I'm working on here in the near future is I'm going to push out a design that you can just order from JLC PCB where it's already just populated. The downside is that you still have to solder the SD card on the bottom if that's what you want, if you want the design I'm using right now. I will design one where the SD card's also on top, so it's just all on there, and all you have to do is flash the chips, and you can get rocking and rolling that way. And then it's just a bulk order from that point. But yes.
On the COM port part, I've never seen that before. It kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Sure.
And I'm on the detection side, so like, I guess you could just look at, is it going to say COM port connected to on a log, or?
You will see. So what we do, like other hardware implants, is we mount a COM port under a vid and PID like any USB, right?
Okay.
So you're going to see that pop up. Now, because of the way it works, you're going to see the same vid-PID combo on the COM port versus the keyboard. So that's going to be a tip off, right? Even if you were to use a Keystrokes and you plug it in and it does dual mode, it's going to have the same vid-PID combo for both things. So that's going to be one of your warnings, but otherwise it's going to look like a standard COM device.
Okay.
And keep in mind, we can manipulate the vid-PID to make it look like anything, right? So like in this instance, this is mimicking a Logitech keyboard. So if you plug it in, it's not going to come up and say, hey, Arduino. No, it's going to say Logitech K120 keyboard or Dell whatever keyboard, or, you know, so we can get crafty that way too.
Yeah, it's a battle.
Yeah. Yes?
Would PowerShell script transcription or transcription logging catch that?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not on the blue side of things, so if you're looking for it, what you're going to see, though, is you're going to see that there is a reverse shell to the COM port. You're probably not going to see the traffic, though. So unless maybe you get down onto that channel and you start, yeah. But then it comes down to your payload, right? Are you encrypting it and decrypting it on the other side? Like, it all comes down to how crafty you want to be with your payload from that point. But yeah, you'll see more than likely something logging, like IEX or something to the COM port, or redirected that way. Yes?
How are the encryption keys provisioned?
You manually do it. So they're predetermined when you set up the radio. And now we're using a Digimesh radio, and that's how they do it. But the way it's designed, the way we designed it is you can design a hat and just pull off the radio and swap it out. So Digi has a few different versions of radios. So in this instance, this is a 2.4 gigahertz radio. If it's fully powered line of sight, you can hit 2 miles. If you think 2.4 gigahertz is too noisy or too common, you can go down to sub-gigahertz, because they're IoT radio manufacturers, so they have a bunch of variations with the same footprint.
Yeah, it kind of leads into another question I was curious about.
Sure.
Any recommendations on detecting a potential device like this?
Yeah, so the...
Looking for like a non-listening signal, right?
Right. So the question is, any recommendations on detecting? Visual is going to be the biggest thing, right? We're targeting keyboards with this. So tamper tape on keyboards, buy your keyboards from trusted vendors, you know, kind of highlights the supply chain risk, right? If you're buying it from Amazon or, you know, a mass warehouse like that, you don't know who the actual company is you're getting it from. It's, you know, if you're buying a Dell keyboard from Dell and a third-party seller's also providing it to Amazon, it all goes in the same bin, and you just get luck of the draw, whichever one. So something to be aware of. But yeah, so trusted vendors, tamper tape on the keyboards, not that that can't be overcome, but it's a good step in the right direction. War walking, but again, you know, if you see sub-gigahertz signal in your office space, it might be a tip-off, right? So 2.4 gigahertz, not so much. It's going to be a noisy spectrum, but
Awesome work, man. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Any other questions before we go? All right. Well, with that, if anybody wants to see it or talk to me more about it, I'm more than happy to talk with you guys afterwards, and I'll be outside. Thank you, guys.